Alright, so all I've done is open up the Digital Cheaters Ford Mustang car that's available. It's car 001 on your asset files. And like I said in the introduction video, you guys can use whichever car you want. So if you have a different one that you want to rig up, definitely go ahead and grab that now instead of the Mustang. I really like the Mustang model. It's really nicely done. The only other car that I'd have instead of it is a Camaro, I think, just out of personal choice. And what I want to do is I just really want to check the geometry, clean it up a little bit, and then put this into some sort of hierarchy if it's not already. So that's the first thing we can actually check is the hierarchy. So if I come up to my schematic view and just open that up, and let's just increase the size of this so we can all see it a bit better. And the first thing I want to do in here is just in a blank area, I just want to right click and go to hierarchy mode. So you can see this button here. And by clicking that, we got some redraw issues on Max. That's alright, it's gone now. You can see that this isn't in a hierarchy at all. This is just in one big long line where, you know, some things are parented together that probably don't need to. Although I could be wrong. So let's check out what those are. So with the select tool, let's just grab them both, minimize this. I'm going to press F4 in my viewport to turn on edge faces and hit my Z key to zoom in. And where the heck is this? Alright, let's move them around a bit. So I'm just going to press W and move them. Alright, so it's the headlamp bulb from inside of the front of the car here. So that's not a big deal, that's fine. Let's bring back our schematic view. And let's actually put this all into one hierarchy, so I just have to scroll up and down rather than side to side, because as you can see by the naming convention that we've gotten here, I know what the hood and belly pan is, but object 02, 03, box 01, all of these haven't really been named correctly, or they haven't had a naming structure put to them yet. A few things have, but the other ones I've literally got no idea what they are. And also these different colors as well are indicating that there's still some legacy left over from the modeling. So things like the line would probably outline the hood or something like that too when this was actually modeled up. And we've got rectangles in here as well. So let's deal with them in a second. Right now I'm just going to go back to my viewport and minimize this. I'm going to go to my create panel, come across to helpers and use a point. So let's just click in the scene, right click to end the tool. If you haven't already, make sure that you're on your select and move tool. That's the hotkeys W on your keyboard if you've got the original hotkeys. And let's just right click on these little spinners to set this to 000 on the world. And I'm going to rename this point because I like to have at least my rig. I'm not too bothered about the geometry on this, but I want my rig to have correct naming conventions. So I'm going to do VEH, capital VEH for vehicle, underscore car, doesn't matter what the car is, underscore capital root. And the root is going to be the highest level of the hierarchy. So I really like to have my own naming convention and my hierarchies nicely set up so I know exactly what everything is. So bringing back the schematic view, you can see that this would have been added right the way at the end of this. So I'm going to have to scroll all the way along. This is why I hate not having this in a hierarchy, so you can see it here. And back in our viewport, I'm just going to grab everything else. Just marquee select over the top of everything. Hold down Alt and select the root so that it's not selected. Go to select and link, and you can see that I'm dragging, clicking and dragging, and I'm just going to drop these on top of that root control that we just created, or that root locator, or dummy point helper, whatever you want to call it. And let's bring back our schematic view, and let's go all the way back to the beginning. And we'll be able to see that now this is all in one straight hierarchy. Now this hierarchy isn't perfect, but it means that I can actually get in here and have a look at things just a little bit easier. Just for me, I'm so used to working this way. You might prefer it in a big long line, but for me, I don't know, I just really can't find anything. So let's have a look in here. So I mentioned these different colors indicate that, you know, some of these are shapes rather than a geometry, so like these guys. So let's grab line 01 and have a look at what it is. So grabbing that with the select tool and just clicking in here, just minimize the schematic view. And I can see that it looks like it's around the door trim, so what I'll do is I'll just use my select and move tool, or hotkey is W, and let's just move this up. And you can see this is This was actually created, I guess, to make the door during modeling, so it's probably not needed anymore. So if I hit delete, nothing should actually happen. It doesn't, which is great. Alright, so let's bring back our schematic view, see what these other guys are as well. So let's get one of these rectangles. And it looks like it's at the back of the car somewhere. Okay, cool. So you'll notice that this looks like geometry, but I'm guessing this is just because this is a rectangle and it shows up as a shape in the schematic view. If I move across the modifier panel, you can see this is actually an editable spline with an extrude on it. What that means is if I just go to wireframe mode and I turn off the extrude, you'll see what this object actually really is without the modifiers applied to it. So it's just an editable spline that's been extruded with a modifier, which is great, that's fine, but we really need to clean this up. I need everything as geometry, or I'd prefer everything as geometry, so let's turn on that extrude, and I'm just going to right click down here where there's nothing in this modify panel, and I'm just going to collapse all, and that should collapse me down to an editable mesh, which is fine. That's exactly cool for what we need, for what I need. I prefer to work in mesh or poly, an editable one, so that should be fine. This guy, I guess, is the other rectangle, so if I click on it, yeah, it's rectangle number 2, editable spline with an extrude on. Again, exactly the same thing as the other side, which is fine. So let's right click, collapse all, and that's changed it back to a mesh, which is great. So I think there was one more in here, so bring back the schematic view, and we've got shape 01. Let's just zoom out a little bit, and so he's the only culprit left. So let's grab shape 01. Let's minimize that. Let's take a look at what it is. Okay, cool. So again, if I turn off the modifiers, we can see an editable spline in here with a cross section applied to it, and then the surface to make up the actual surface, which is a fine way to model for what we need. It's not going to really work. So with that said, let's right click and collapse all. And you can see this has turned out to be an editable patch, and we want this as, well, I want this really as a mesh or a poly. So there's a few things when converting from a patch to a poly, and you'll see if we go and right click in here and we go editable poly and convert this across, you'll notice that the number of tessellations across here will increase. So let's just do that, and you can see it's increased quite a bit actually. And that's pretty much too much geometry for what we need for this. If we were going to crack this maybe, or do something fancy with the glass, we might need this much detail, but we really don't need it. So I'm just going to undo. I can either come up to my scene undos up here or press Ctrl Z. That's going to take me back to a patch. If I just convert this to a mesh, that tessellation won't actually happen. So right click and go to editable mesh. And now that doesn't give me all of those tessellations and that deep detailed geometry. So I think that cleans up, if we bring back the schematic view, that cleans up all of the shapes that were left over from modeling, and that's fine. So the only other thing, except the naming convention, which I'm not actually going to fix, I'm not too bothered about it because we're not jumping too much into so much detail. With this being more mechanical, it means we can just parent things in quite easily rather than having to skin it and find out what each part is actually called. The only thing that's really bothering me now is this back windscreen. So this has got a ton of triangles in it that I'd prefer to remove. This shouldn't take us too long, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's just scroll all the way to the top of this and grab an edge. And can we loop or ring? We can do anything. Alright, so with these selected, we can go through and just start removing these out. So I'm just going to hold down Control and hit backspace to get rid of some of this. This is going to clean this up pretty nicely. And it shouldn't take me too long just to go ahead and manually do this so that I know that I'm going to get it right. So usually, depending on if you're in a production environment, I mean, I would probably just fix this up like I'm doing right now. It's pretty simple. You don't have to be great at modeling or anything. You can just be a rigger and do this. This isn't difficult at all. And it's not really taking me too long to remove it. Alternatively, if you had a model that comes back like this from modeling in a production environment, you might want to send this back to the modeling guys and go and ask them to, maybe help you clean this up a little bit, just to make it easier for rigging and things like that. So you'll notice that I'm leaving the outside sections just for the moment, because as I'm removing those, I'm holding down Control, which also removes the vertex as well. So you'll see there's no vertices left in the center of these. If I do this to something like an edge, this vertex at the very edge here, this guy, he would actually be removed. So let's do that now, and I'll show you what I mean. So grab the edit poly, the edge, grab that, and if hold down Control and hit backspace, you'll notice that that actual vertex gets removed, and that's really not what I want to do. So instead of doing that, just hit backspace, and that will keep that vertex placed where it is. So I'm going to do this for all of the outsides except these guys. These guys are going to have another vertex placed in the middle there because they're in the very center of these polys. So let's remove it. That was fine. I used the Control backspace on that one. Let's just grab these and just hit the usual, just the backspace without the Control. Let's take a look at what else we've got. Oh yeah, try not to do what I just did there as well. When you grab something and move it around, you're just going to have to undo that. And get a few more on the other side as well. So this is pretty manual, and I'm sure we could come up with a better way of doing this, but for me, it just means that I know I'm getting it right. And let's just remove those as well. Okay, let's take a look at the top view just to make sure that's as symmetrical as possible, or it looks it at least. Yep, that's fine. So that's the geometry cleaned up. We can start moving into splitting out the chassis and the wheels.